Welcome back to part 3 of the Les Paul Jr. guitar style build. This episode very much concerned with neck construction. I hope you enjoy it, and if you are enjoying it, please subscribe. Anyway, here's part 3. Welcome back, and today I'm going to be putting a radius on my fretboard. Now, putting a radius on the fretboard is absolutely essential. It's that curve on the fretboard that makes the thing comfortable to play. I prefer a 10-inch radius, just slightly flatter. So I think 10 inches, 12 inches, something around there is a nice compromise. In the old days, what I used to do was basically put it in this jig and then use my radiusing beam to go up and down it, like that. And about 2.5 to 3 hours later, I would have a radiused fretboard, but I would also have a lungful of black ebony dust, which is extremely horrible, dangerous and unpleasant. These days I use an altogether better method. I use a jig. I use this radiusing jig, which I bought from Guitars and Woods in Portugal. This is just a fantastic piece of kit. The sledge goes on top, your router goes on the top of that, and then you literally go up and down the fretboard, just moving it across each time, and it puts a perfect radius. These template edges, this is replaceable. I've got a 12, a 14 and a 16, and that's pretty much all I use. So that's the principle of it. So what I have to do now is to stick the fingerboard down, and then once the fingerboard is stuck down onto my bottom wooden part of the jig, we can fit the router to the top of the jig and then start sledging. And that is that, I think. So take that off. Yep, that's looking pretty good. Now it does leave a little bit of a character on it, so we will go over it to get the little bits off, but basically that's it. That is radiused, and radiused beautifully. I did measure the depth beforehand, so I knew what I was aiming at, and that's pretty much where I am, so I'm very happy. Using a jig like this, it's fast and it does a really good job. It's worth every penny. No matter how much we use jigs and power tools, eventually it comes down to some sort of hand tool, and I have to say these radius beams are absolutely essential. So much easier than using just a radius beam on its own. But if you don't have a jig and you don't want to spend the money, then you know the radius beam works perfectly well, but I would prefer to do it this way any day of the week. Once you've got your fretboard all nice and radius, you've got to put some frets on it, and to put some frets on it you're going to need some slots. There is an algorithm. If you measure the scale length of your guitar, and you know that already, and then you divide it by a certain number and times it by the 4th phase of the moon, add your mother's grandmother's birthday to it, and it's a nightmare, and I don't think I've ever done it that way, and I don't know anybody who has. Most people just go online to Stu Mac's website and it works out where the actual fret should go given the scale length and what the inter-fret spacing will be, and that way you can actually use a micrometer, work your way up the neck, mark it all off, and then saw it across using whatever saw you wish to do it with. I probably was taught the algorithm, but I've never used it. What I have is a jig. It's an absolutely fantastic piece of kit. The jig itself has 2 slots, one to hold the saw pretty much in the right place, and then a very much finer one to put the blade exactly in the right place. And you just work your way down the neck using the very fine slot to make a mark. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to work my way up the neck using this jig to mark up where the slots will be, and then once I've marked them up I'll drop the guides out of the way, and then I'll just make my slots in the normal way using this fantastic fret saw that comes with it, which has a fixed depth, and that depth is perfect for fretting. So I've used this for a couple of years and I've not used any other method since. Brilliant jig. So now I've made the marks for where the frets are going to go, I can now drop the fret guide fine scale out of the way, leaving me with just these wider slots, which I can now use to cut the final fret slots themselves. And there we have it, a completely slotted fretboard. I've now marked it up, ready to cut off the excess so I can do the taper on the fretboard. I'll be doing that on the bandsaw. Of course, the first time I did this, I did it the wrong way around, so it tapered in the wrong direction. That would have been a disaster. So I've corrected that, so here we go. So I'm just going to clean up the sides of the fretboard by running my block plane up it. Okay. I don't want to go any closer than that at this stage of it. That's enough. Cool. Well, that really is a beautiful piece of ebony, isn't it? It's all shiny and all dimensioned up. It's all slotted, ready to go. I've left it very slightly large because you know, we haven't settled on anything yet. It's always best to leave things just ever so slightly large. So the next thing we need to do before we stick that on is to dimension up the neck and get all these excess bits of wood off and cut the shape out, which is really very exciting. It's always a tremendous relief when you get that done, because it's a little bit scary. Bandsaws are a bit scary, but they are brilliant for getting lots of wood off as quickly as possible. Now, a lot of people might say, okay, get the templates out, stick the templates on and route away. I don't really like routers very much, routers. I prefer to do a lot of work by hand. So what I'm going to do is probably just get this a little bit closer and clean it up before I put a router on it and do the final finish. Well, the headstock's all routed out and looking nice. Now I've made a bit of a rod for my own back here because I'm not going to be using the standard templates in the way that they were designed to be used, because I'm not doing the tenon. So what I have to do is to route the sides of the neck here with one template, and then I think I'm going to have to swap over to the fretboard template because that defines the heel that I'm going to be using. So it's going to be a little bit touch and go, but I'm just going to take it nice and slowly and make it up as I go along, which is pretty much what I normally do. This is not good. Okay, change of plan. I don't like routers. I don't like templates particularly. I like drawing a line and planing down to it. And in the process of using the router, it's just so brutal and so unforgiving. It doesn't give you any spare edges. I have decided just to plane this instead of routing it out. So I'm just going to set the line myself and plane it, and that way it can all proceed a little bit more in a more controlled fashion. At the end of the day, this guitar is, you know, being made by me, and following a template slavishly just doesn't appeal. I feel the tolerances are too fine, so I'm just going to plane the edges off. Great. Okay, looks like we've finally got our neck in good shape. I've just pressed in the truss rod just to get things back in their place, and that's going to go on there like that, that's going to go on there like that, and that's going to go on there like that. So that is basically how our neck is going to look. So once we've got these little holes drilled in the actual neck itself, put our little nails in, what we want to do is drill corresponding holes on the back of the fingerboard. And we do that by placing it on the top, pushing it down hard, and it'll make little dents in the back, and then drill them just half the depth of the fretboard or less, just enough to register the pins. As usual, just enough. And use your special spreader finger. Okay, cool. Right, that feels located at that end, so I'm going to quickly stick a clamp on there. Good. And then this end, that's located as well, so we can stick a clamp on there. Right. Okay, great luthier trick number one is use your radius as a gluing aid. And there it is, all clamped up. I don't think I can do much more tonight, so I'm going to leave this overnight and unclamp it in the morning. So I'll see you then. Welcome back to Philosophy Corner. You know, when you're building a guitar, things occur to you, and one of the things that's occurred to me during this build is our reliance on templates. Now, I very often make a template, even with my own design guitars, I make a template for the body of the guitar. What I never do is make a template for the neck of the guitar, and the reason for that is I like to creep up on the dimensions. I don't like to go straight to width on the whole thing. With a template like this, if you make a mistake, if it slips or something during the routing process, you will ruin it, and it'll end up being too thin, or it'll end up with a big dent in the side, which means it's basically ruined and you're back to square one. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today. Let's get back to the build. Let's take these clamps off.
I don't know that.
Thank you, Alexa. What's the chances I speed this up? Because I abandoned the laser accuracy of the routing and the templates and everything in favour of planing it down, I'm now going to have to go over it with my absolutely dead straight edge, just to make sure that the sides of my neck are dead straight. Now I've had a go at it with a block and a sanding block and a block plane, and now that is absolutely flat, and I've trimmed off all of the excess from the fingerboard. I'm just going to check the other side just to make sure that's dead good. Yeah, if anything, there's a tiny high point. A sanding block is actually enough. I don't really want to use anything more abrasive than that. Your wood may be different, of course. Most people's are. And just that little bit of sanding has brought this right down. We're talking fractions. But we need to get this absolutely right, because we don't want to be led astray. So we have a mostly complete neck. Moving forward, I think the best thing to do is to look at this and look at the depth of this neck heel. And I think the neck heel is actually way too big. Ideally, I want to leave enough wood underneath the neck joint to give it the strength required. And at the moment, that's only going to be a few millimeters. That's probably going to be about maybe 7 or 8 millimeters. So I think what I need to do is to take the depth of this heel down by about 6 or 7 millimeters, just so that I can retain enough wood in the body to give it the strength required. I've just done a quick balance together, of course, just to see how things work out. I mean, obviously this is not sunk in, but I think we can already see that this is developing into a really beautiful instrument already. It's actually very heavy. That's my only slight concern at the moment. This body wood, much denser than I imagined it would be, but it's not excessive, but it's much heavier than I thought. But you know, I'm very happy with it. Got to make up a jig, got to make up a template so that I can cut this neck pocket. Now the neck pocket is not just a straightforward neck pocket that I can just cut willy-nilly. It's actually got to be at about a 2.5 degree angle, and I'm going to copy that angle off of my existing Les Paul Junior. That will give us the right angle to reach the bridge successfully. But you know, all these things are great in theory. They tend to differ very, very slightly when we actually do it for real. Well, I'm using my laser again to get my neck completely in line with what will be the template for the neck socket. I've just got it going straight down the center of the neck and then straight into the center line of the template wood. And I've set some little bits of perspex here, little bits of acrylic, which should outline exactly where I need to cut this template. It's simple, and I hope it works. Now, I've been trying to work out a way of getting the angle in this neck pocket as simply as possible. And what I've come up with is this. I've got my template in the front, which I cut, which you've seen me do. And then I've got a block of wood at the front, which goes on the front of the guitar. And I've got a bit of double-sided tape inside of there. And on the back, I've got a little piece of wood across here, which I just slipped onto the back and lifted it up by 1.5 degrees. And I know it was 1.5 degrees because I used this, which is an angle measure device. You just put it on top of something flat, zero it, and then tilt it, and it shows you the angle you're at. Just brilliant. I mean, this is perfect. It's a tense thing, you know, doing neck pockets. It's a tense thing because, you know, one slip and you could potentially ruin the whole thing. But I think it's over. I think it's done. I think I've got about 1.5 degree angle on it, so I'm happy with that. So next thing, let's see if it fits. Right, I've just squared off the corners of this neck pocket, ready to fit the neck. So let's see if the neck fits. Not exactly a balance together this time, more of a press together. There it goes. Oh yeah, that's really quite tight. And there it is. We've got a Les Paul Junior. It's a little bit squared off, but you know, I think that's a functioning guitar, almost. I think that's looking lovely. So tomorrow we can start shaping the neck and really moving on with this build. Anyway, I'm absolutely exhausted, so I think I'm going to call it a night. I will see you tomorrow. Yep, it really is taking shape, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Next time we're going to be doing a lot of neck shaping, I know, because I've just done it, and it was great fun. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you next time. Please subscribe if you can, and I'll see you soon.